Hi, this is Mr. Weston. Today we're doing a Khan Academy tutorial called Add and Subtract Complex Numbers. So this is kind of reviewing imaginary numbers, complex numbers, and combining like terms, those three concepts. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of get started. I'm first looking at this part. Express your answer in the form of A plus BI. This is a complex number. That's the notation for it. And the real part and imaginary part are designated here. So anytime it has this I next to it, that means it's some sort of imaginary number. And then if it just has a normal number, then it's a real number. Imaginary numbers, don't think of them as numbers that don't exist. Think of them as a number set apart from our normal number system to handle the situation where we have the square root of a negative number, and that is I. So I have other videos that explain I in further detail, but this is kind of the principle of I, and you really don't need to know it that much for this exercise. Now, I want to draw your attention to this area of my screen, like terms, where you see that if you have a -7 and a +2, those are like terms. Okay, so if we're doing adding those two together, we would get -5. 1x and -3x, those are like terms. We couldn't combine them with something like 3y because x is not like with y. Pi, those are kind of like terms. And then we have I. So I and a -5i, those are like terms. But these separately cannot be combined with each other. So that's important to note. And as I'm looking at this situation right here up at the top, essentially I can think of it just like that. So if you've seen this, what I've underlined in blue before, something you should be familiar with from algebra, it's the exact same thing as we're handling that complex number series right there, that those expressions. So the first thing you want to do, this is a two-step problem, is one, you're going to want to handle the parentheses and distribute anything out in front. So if I'm doing it with the x, I'm going to start with that just to show you how simple it is. I'm going to distribute that negative sign, and that makes it a +9, and then I make it a -2x. So as I'm combining these, I have an 18 plus 9 that gives me 27, and then -40 minus 2x, that gives me -42x. As I do the same thing up here, I'm going to do the minus, right? And then I get +9 minus 2i, and then 18 minus 40i. Almost the exact same process. I have 18 plus the 9, that gives me 27, and then minus 42i, and that's my answer. So you can see it's almost identical. The only difference is we have I instead of x. So I'm going to type in 27 minus 42i. 27 minus 42, and the I is there in the bottom left. Next question. All right, this one's even easier. So you can see here we have, now that we understand that it's kind of like x, and we're just looking for like terms here, there's no term or no sign in front of this parenthesis here, so we can get rid of the parentheses. And it's a pause in front of this one, so we can just get rid of that parentheses. So we just have 10 minus 22i plus 22i. These are the only like terms, okay? So I'm going to highlight, I'm going to highlight those, -22i and +22i. And that goes to 0. So if you had -22x plus 22x, it would go to 0. -22 plus 22 would go to 0. So we're just left with 10, and that's our answer. So we have 10, and I'm not sure if it wants me to put plus 0i. I'm going to just try 10 to see what it does, and I think we're good. All right. Very similar here. Only difference is we have a negative out in front. This would have been a good one to start with. So we have the minus sign. We have to distribute that first. There's nothing to do inside the parentheses, but there's something outside the parentheses, so we need to distribute it. So we have -6 minus 30i, and then we have that -8 out in front. The only like terms are that -8 and the -6. That gives me -14, and there's no other I, so I'm just going to leave the minus 30i. So -14 minus 30i. So -14, -14 minus 30i, and that's it. Next question. This is my final one. Not too bad. Actually, the first question was the toughest out of all of these. And you're not... Oh, there it is. I was trying to find my scratch pad. All right. So here we have -71 plus 2i. There's no sign out in front. So that means no numbers. No distribution required. This one just has a positive sign, so I can get rid of these parentheses because there's nothing I can do inside the parentheses there. Plus 88 minus 12i. So I'm going to combine the negative 71 and the positive 88 first. I think that gives me positive 17. And then I have 2i and a negative 12i. That gives me minus 10i as I do that. So 17 minus 10i, and that should be my final answer to finish up. 17 minus 10i. Just double check that. Check it. And we're good. So that's adding and subtracting complex numbers. Much easier than you probably thought. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you want to check out more like it, make sure to check out my channel, search for anything you want. And I look forward to seeing you next time right here on Wes Explains Best.